Yo, it's poppin' gamers, WQ here. And guys, if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe right now. It's going to completely change your life, and it's going to change your perception on what gameplay is, and then you're actually going to make better gameplay decisions, and you're going to end up winning more and winning harder, and believe me, it's going to change your life. So make sure to hit the subscribe button right now. So guys, I came up with something recently I called gameplay theory. Now, I came up with this idea a few years ago, but all it means is that gameplay is the end all of gameplay, right? Gameplay is, I know it sounds crazy. Gameplay is actually the end all. Gameplay comes down to gameplay, and it's called gameplay theory. You might be thinking, well, that sounds too basic. It's too simple. Like, it's too obvious. Like, of course, like, what else? If it's not gameplay, like, what else would gameplay come down to, right? You'd actually be surprised though. A lot of people don't think it is gameplay. A lot of people seem to think it's all mental. There's this news article, student athletes mentality is just as important as physicality, which to me, it sounds like they're contradicting themselves. Earlier in their title, they say it's all mental, and then they say it's half mental, right? It's just as important. Well, that sounds like a contradiction. So yeah, I don't know. I really do not go near mentality stuff because it usually makes no sense. But yeah, if you Google how important mentality, there's a lot of articles and athletes and psychologists and, you know, people with like degrees all saying it's so important to have a mentality. It's so important to have a good mentality. It's more important than physical strength. It's more important than what happens in the game, guys. Mentality is everything. And you hear Melee people all the time talk about, oh, mentality is 90% of the game.
Execution is really important. And don't get me wrong, if you can't execute a certain thing that you're trying to do, then obviously you need to work at it. But what's more important than execution? In my mind, I think the mental game of not even just Smash Brothers, being a competitor is probably the most important thing, first and foremost.
So it's obviously not just physical sports. A lot of people think things like video games and Melee, it's all mentality, and mentality rules gameplay, but I argue actually not. It's gameplay rules gameplay. So I wanted to show you guys one of my favorite moments in gameplay when Faker actually killed Ambition in the mid lane. This is Faker's first game. This guy went on to be like one of the best players of all time, and he straight up kills Ambition kind of randomly at level 6, and a lot of people are kind of freaking out.
Mechanics are just so good that you can keep up, even under turret.
Yeah, I mean, I was curious to see how well Captain Jack would do in this lane because he's been typically a relatively weak lane.
Whoa, Ambition! What? Faker!
Yeah, so Faker just
executes Ambition.
Faker literally just straight up kills Ambition for pretty much no effort. He doesn't even do anything. The Ambition just dies to nothing, and I think it's pretty crazy because this was Faker's first competitive game, and he kind of like dropped the ball hard on him, Ambition there, and people like really figured out because Ambition was actually a really good mid laner back then. But yeah, if you look at Ambition in this fight, he actually did something called evolving spikes or evolving wings or whatever. So when Kha'Zix turns level 6, he can evolve one of the spells, and he like kind of freezes on the ground, and his body like physically evolves, and he can't move or do anything. And so Faker was actually looking for that, and he was expecting that, and he waited for that to happen when Ambition turned level 6, and then he just destroyed him right when that happened. And so that's interesting to me because that is specifically a gameplay interaction, right? So let's take both Nidalee and Kha'Zix, and then this is Faker on the right, and we have Ambition on the left. Right, so Faker is going to go in for a kill on Ambition, and he's trying to get a 1-0 scoreline, and he does a specific set of stuff, not only this whole game, but in that specific interaction that kills Ambition, and he gets a 1-0 score. Now, I think this is interesting because this is 100% a gameplay interaction. 100% comes down to gameplay. There is literally nothing else you can fault to this too. You cannot say Faker had a better mentality. You cannot say Ambition had a worse mentality. Like, this is completely nonsense. This 100% is a gameplay situation, and actually there's reasons for why this gameplay situation happened in the first place. Faker had low mana, so maybe Ambition thought he couldn't kill him. Ambition was being pressured really hard the whole game, and so guess what happens when you're being pressured in gameplay? You generally play a little bit worse. That's a gameplay interaction. So my favorite thing to counteract people who go on about mentality is, so if gameplay is all mental, or it's half mental, or it's any percent mental, let's assume Ambition has the best mentality in the world, and then let's assume Faker has the absolute worst mentality in the world, right? And I don't think that's true. I don't think Faker has a bad mentality, but I don't think Ambition has a bad mentality either. But let's just assume there is a Nidalee and there's a Kha'Zix. Nidalee's a trash can in mentality, has absolutely no presence of it, does everything wrong. And I know some people say, well, if you don't think about mentality, that's a good mentality. Okay, just assume Faker has the worst mentality, or assume this Nidalee has the worst mentality, right? This isn't Faker right now. This is just a random Nidalee and a random Kha'Zix. And just assume this Nidalee has absolute trash mentality and Kha'Zix has a perfect mentality. Training their whole life for mentality. It's the pinnacle of gameplay. Like, this is the pinnacle of mentality. I guess it wouldn't be gameplay. It wouldn't be the pinnacle of gameplay, but it's the pinnacle of mentality. And the Nidalee's just been practicing in gameplay, right? So this exact same situation happens where the Nidalee does the same specific inputs. It does the same specific thing happens. Guess what would result in the game, guys? Guess what would result? Nidalee would get a kill. Kha'Zix would die. Same scoreline. That's the same thing that would happen. Kha'Zix would still die. Nothing else would happen, right? The mentality had no effect. It had absolutely no effect on the outcome of the match. It had no effect on the outcome of the interaction. That's because mentality doesn't do anything, right? It's entirely a function of gameplay. Gameplay comes down to gameplay. It only comes down to gameplay. Nothing else is relevant. Nothing else matters. So how can there be no mentality? How can no mentality exist? How can mentality not be a factor of gameplay? Well, the thing about mentality is it still exists. It's still a thing. It's just that's not what gameplay is determined by. It's always determined by the gameplay. So I found this video called Top 10 Rage Quit Super Smash Bros. And this video is showing how people rage quit. So we can assume that Zoo, who rage quits in this match, has a bad mentality, and I can show you exactly what happened. So let's watch this match. Right, so Zoo is doing okay, and then I guess he's playing against Mew King, and he just straight up rage quits. So he throws the match, and he probably could have won it. I mean, anyone reasonable who plays Melee, you're down a stock, you're down 2 stocks. Like, you can easily win this match. There's absolutely no reason to just straight up give up. Obviously, we can attribute that to a bad mentality, so I think that this is a situation where a lot of people try to argue that having a mentality, this is why it's important, this is why it matters, this is mentality, this is not gameplay. But no, actually, this is still a gameplay interaction, right? Ultimately, what caused this set to end? It's pausing and then LRA start. That's what caused this set to end. Literally, that is why he lost, because he did specific gameplay inputs. What if he had flubbed the gameplay inputs? What if he had tried to press the start button and he missed the start button, right? And then he just died. He would have been in a better spot, right? So this is, sure, you can argue it's because of mentality, but no, it's a gameplay situation. He lost his match because of a gameplay situation. This came down to gameplay. This was not due to some kind of arbitrary, mystical mentality. So the other thing about why this is not a mentality problem is, why was Zoo in this position? Like, why did he get into this position where he got knocked off stage and then gimped and then he's down a stack? Like, why did that happen, right? Again, it wasn't his mentality. It was specific gameplay interactions you can actually look at in the game. You can actually specifically find them and point them out, and then realize that Zoo probably does this a lot in all of his matches. He has specific habits. Whoever the Marth was found this stuff. He specifically found this stuff. So suddenly, the more you look into it, it doesn't seem like Zoo's mentality is really a problem here. And actually, it's just mathematically not possible to be his mentality, right? He pressed the button, said forfeit the game. He did not mentally send some kind of energy signal into the game that changed the outcome of the match. That's not possible. That doesn't make sense. That's not a thing. So another thing I'm highly critical of the Melee community, some guys talking about. I have a friend who has a huge problem. He has an amazing combo game, fantastic tech skill, and a very unpredictable playstyle. That is until he loses the game. All of his predictability goes to shit, and he becomes really easily readable as a Dr. Seuss book. The worst of all, he starts flubbing text and SDing. So what do you people do to deal with a negative mentality, right? So they argue the problem here is a negative mentality, not the specific problems in his gameplay, like flubbing text and SDing. And actually, it seems like he's a perfect player, except for flubbing text and SDing, right? So that seems like a problem. That seems like something you can actually look at, change, and fix, right? But no, they blame it on a negative mentality. His problem seems to be salt. It's the salt. It's salt after losing the games to janky characters. Why is he losing the games to janky carries? Is it his mentality? Some mystical force that nobody can actually concretely define? There's no research done into. Or is it specifically why he's losing? And the very top post, and this is why I just can't take this shit anymore. Read the inner game of tennis, not a suggestion. It's an order. This is useless. This will do nothing for your gameplay. This is not remotely related to gameplay. This is absolute bogus. This is just a waste of time, and it's 100% designed to just look good and sound good. Also, if someone looks like they're out mind gaming someone and then they lose and it all goes to shit, they might have just been figured out. Well, in the Noodle, you're halfway there. I would get rid of this first sentence, and I would look more focus on, yeah. Obviously, they're not a perfect player. Like, they're not a perfect player. They're not remotely close to a perfect player. They don't define what is good and bad. Like, you don't define what is good and bad in a game. The game defines what's good and bad, and it's your job to figure it out. And he's not doing anything right because obviously he's getting destroyed by random low tiers, ice climbers. He SDs a lot. And he basically can't maintain his gameplay at all. So, like, obviously, he's not even a good player. So, there's two players I want to specifically talk about here. We have WQ'd, who is actually pretty good at Melee. And he recently won, like, last big Melee tournament. So, WQ'd a really good player. And people often criticize this guy for having the worst mentality, a terrible mentality. He needs to coach, all this stuff. But, like, he just won a very big tournament. And then they look at another player. So, everybody credits WQ'd to having a very good mentality and being very mentally affordable player, and he's a strong player mentally, and he does all the right decisions mentally, and he's a good mentality. But then why is this guy not winning tournaments? Like, he wasn't even at Summit because he wasn't good enough, right? He wasn't voted in. He didn't win the tournaments, right? So, like, why is this guy not winning every tournament if he has a great mentality, or at least consistently placing higher than WQ'd? I mean, just look at WQ'd's recent performances. First. Like, the worst performance here is 9th. He has a few 9th places. He gets 5 first places in a row. Like, how many first places are here? And then go to WQ'd. There's no first places. He has 3rd place at Flatiron. It wasn't that competitive. Nordkai validated. Looks like a local. He got 2nd. 17th at Genesis 5. Like, where 17th at Genesis 4? Again, no more 17th. There's no first places here. So how can WQ'd be a better player than WQ'd? But everyone argues that PPU's mentality is better. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, that's not a coherent statement, right? So I think the obvious conclusion here is that mentality is not a gameplay factor. In fact, mentality can't be a gameplay factor. It's literally not possible for mentality to be a gameplay factor. You can't argue that it can be a gameplay factor. It's not a possible argument you can make. If you went on a test in any class that's mathematical, you answered on a test that mentality is a gameplay factor, you'll always get the question wrong. It can't be a gameplay factor. Gameplay is entirely what happens on screen. It entirely comes down to what happens on screen in the game. It cannot come down to mentality or any arbitrary conclusion that people come to. There's a lot of these things that people come to, right? Just insert whatever you want here. Just doesn't matter. People will make up all these excuses or reasons they lost. None of that matters. None of them are gameplay factors. If it's gameplay that you lost, is that why you lost? Because you did the wrong inputs at the wrong time? Because you're not smart enough, you're not good enough at the game? That's called gameplay. That actually is a gameplay factor. It is a gameplay factor. Gameplay is a gameplay factor. In fact, this is the only gameplay factor. This is what gameplay comes down to. This is what gameplay theory is. And then we're going to go into how you can improve your gameplay. You can change your gameplay. You can become a better player in the game using gameplay, getting away from things like mentality, lucky breaks, feeling good. I woke up at the right hour. I woke up at 11:11. It's a perfect hour. Therefore, I'm feeling good today. That's made up. That's not real. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you guys all become better gamers and you guys get out there and game. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.
Execution is really, really, really important. And the mental game is not even a skill you learn. If you can't execute something, then obviously you need to quit and realize that the mental game sucks.